Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you had a really nice start into 2025 and let's jump right into the video. So what you see here is a painting I've done plein air in a beach in Picardy in France last year. And basically today's video will be a lessons learned like I've done with this one. I will link it in the description. This was a mountain I've painted plein air, and then what I've just shown was the recreation I've done of this painting in the studio. So if you're new here, the lessons learned are basically painting somewhere plein air, and when I come back to the studio, I'm making a video where I recreate the painting with the same supplies as the one I used plein air, but in the studio. And the idea here is to make me more comfortable for the next time I go plein air. So I try to analyze what I did not succeed in doing plein air and try to see how I can tackle it with the same supplies, but without the pressure of being plein air and having, the weather, the time constraints, the people around and all of that. And one of my goals of 2025 is to actually do more plein air painting, but it's still something I really struggle with. So doing these lessons learned is a way to ease me into going back into plein air and to make me try my supplies, try my paper, try to understand my landscapes and all of that. And the idea of this series, I've done like 2 or 3 videos like that last year, and I will link also the playlist in the description. But the idea came from a series of videos done by Sarah Burns. I will also link it in the description, where she does the same and she filmed what she does plein air and then how it works in the studio. And next year we'll try to do more of those and also take you plein air with me. I've tried to change a bit my setup for filming, and hopefully it will help me bring you more into these painting adventures, either at the studio or plein air. So I'm using my portable painter, my mini portable painter with my basic colors. I have a video where I show you how I set up and how I chose the colors and all of that. I will link it also in the description, but it's basically 2 sets of primaries, one more earthy and one more like full strength primaries, if I can say so. So yeah, when I'm doing this in the studio, I try to reuse the same material. So I also have those 2 water brushes. There is a fat one and a thinner one. And those are the 2 I bring everywhere plein air. Those are round ones. I also have some flats, but I prefer the round ones when I'm going plein air. And this is something I just use to clean the brushes. So I put it around my wrist and it helps. And it's really easy and compact to clean my brushes. And I also have these fine liners. So the first one is a black one and the other one is a fountain pen. And the ink inside is some weird greenish, brownish color. I have a setup also where I use regular brushes for my plein air and not water brushes. But I end up mostly using the water brushes because it is more compact and it is easier for me to set up very quickly and to pack. I didn't find the right process yet to use the regular brushes, even though the results I get with regular brushes, I like them more than with water brushes. But I wanted today to try to recreate with the same conditions in a way. And then as you will see at the end, I also add on top different supplies that I consider into bringing plein air, and I wanted to see if they were really an added value or not. So I'm working here on a Hahnemühle watercolor journal, and it's not cotton paper, it's like cellulose paper. It's a toned paper, but it's a watercolor sketchbook. And I have trouble with this paper because my watercolor ends up being very streaky on that. I cannot really blend them or do wet into wet techniques or whatever. So that was also something I wanted to tackle here on this painting, like how to layer my colors on this paper and how to create some vibrancy and some contrasts on this type of paper. And also, I will show it back at the end, the first one I've done, the first painting I've done, or maybe I can insert it here, a photograph on the side. But basically, if you look at the photograph I have on the right compared to the painting I've done plein air, you see the composition is very different. That's because on the painting I was doing in plein air, I was focusing more on the closer beach compared to where I was. And here I wanted to focus on this mid-section in between the water and the sand, where you have a lot of wet sand and a lot of seawater on the beach. Because this part I really struggled on my first painting, and so that was where my focus was for today. So you can see that the reference picture is not like what I've painted when I was plein air. And also I've printed my reference pictures. This is something I've started to do end of last year, also based on Sarah Burns' advices. And I end up liking way better to paint from physical reference picture compared to a digital one on my computer or phone or whatever. First, it takes way less space. I can also tape it into my paper, and it just have a different quality, and I really like it. And I also like how it creates a layout on your page. So on this first layer, you can see I'm just basically putting colors on the paper. I'm trying to put like the base color and to identify what are the colors I see for the sea, for the sand, what the atmosphere I want to go to. And I make color notes on the right side, like at the bottom of the photograph. And for my main mixes, I write what are the colors I've used to create these mixes, just to help me in the future and to have like color notes and reminders of what were the colors I've used. And those are my base colors, and then I can add a bit more blue or a bit more yellow or whatever to create some more visual interest and to create the shadows or to create the weather part and all of that. And as you can already see here, the result is very patchy on this paper. So you can really see all the different strokes I do with my brush, and you can see where there was more water, when there were more pigments. It does not like, the paper is not working with you. So it's something I really struggled, and I usually have very streaky and very blocky results on this paper. And that's also something I wanted to tackle today on this painting, to try to see how I can use this to my advantage and how I can work with this quality of paper. So here I'm adding some bolder colors to show the wet sand. Something I will be struggling with during the whole painting here, because yeah, it's a recreation of a painting I've struggled to do, but doing it in the studio doesn't mean it's easy. It's easier because you have less pressure, but it's still a struggle. And something I really struggled with was the structure, because there is a lot of things happening, but at the same time, not many things happening. Basically, it's a beach, it's just sand and water, but it's also it's hard to show the sand and the water and the sea at the back and like all these seaweeds in the water and all of that. So I was struggling with the colors. I was struggling with making some soft edges between the sand and the water because the paper was drying very quickly. I was struggling to make some bigger areas, so I was working parts bits by bits because I couldn't wet the whole area and work wet into wet. So yeah, the structure is something I struggled during the whole thing. The colors I struggle with, but it's also interesting. I feel with this paper, the painting stays into the ugly stage for very long, but somehow you will see the end result, but I think it somehow turned out to be something I like in the end. And it just came together at some point. And I will show you on the last part of the video some tips I've used to bring it all together, and that I want to use also when I'm going plein air to help me be happier with what I paint plein air. So I'm still using my larger brush here and trying to work on the seaweeds. So this is the really dark parts you can see on the photograph. Those were lots of seaweeds and dried seaweeds. And I tried to use them to structure my painting because I didn't use exactly the same water composition than I have on the picture. And here I was trying to understand like what was my composition and where was the water, where was the sand, where were the seaweeds. And using this darker color helped me to start create these differences here and there, and slowly decide on where I wanted to put what. Because it's also something when I'm painting plein air, I don't usually have a plan and I make the decisions as I go, a bit like what I'm doing here. Compared to when I'm in the studio, I usually take more time to think about my composition, to do some small pieces and stuff. And when I try to do that plein air, I end up only doing the studies and never doing the actual painting, and it's a bit frustrating. So I tend to decide as I go, but that can also be quite tricky to do that. So it was a good training, actually, to follow the same process here. And yeah, also on the format of the video, I think I will be doing more voiceovers in 2025 because I have a high load of work with my full-time job, and it can be quite difficult to find time where I'm alone at the apartment to film videos when I'm talking live. So it's way easier for me to just film bits and pieces here and there and then do a voiceover when I'm editing. So I will try this new format and hopefully it will help me be more consistent in my posting schedule next year. And I've also rethought. Anyway, I've changed a bit my setup for my studio to help me on my filming process to make it easier and leaner. And I will try to do a studio tour at some point to show you the amendments I've made. So here, as you can see, I have switched to my smaller water brush and tried to add some details and some more definition to the painting. So here I use this brush almost as if I'm drawing. So I usually try to have very pigmented color when I'm doing this and just draw basically. It's less painting, more drawing. It's more putting some details, it can be doing some lines, it can be also very stylized decision, doing some cross-hatching or whatever. And this is what I do with this brush here. Same, put some more definitions on the waves, on all the darkest parts and all the outlines I want to draw. I do with this smaller brush, at least the first pass, and then usually I will do mixed media to add even more definition. And it was, again, this game. It's a lot of back and forth for the structure of my painting. So it was deciding where did I want the seaweeds to go, where did I want the water to go. And I was not very sure on what I was doing here. To be honest, at this point, I thought this is nowhere better than what I've done plein air, and it's just a very patchy watercolor. But I continued and I just trusted the process basically. It was a lot of back and forth because I was kind of confused with the composition, and I found when I was looking at my painting, I found that you could not really understand what you were looking at, and where was the water, where was the sand. So with this finer brush, I was somehow trying to sketch out my painting in a way, and also adding some texture. So adding just some bits and blobs here and there, putting some dots of colors, because the sand is not just one color, and I didn't have really granulating colors or very wet into wet effects, so I wanted to do that more with little dots of colors. And also it was the time where I thought about my values, so how to add the contrast, where were the most saturated parts, the darkest parts of my painting, what was supposed to be lighter, and where did I need to add up and build some layers still. So at this point it was starting to look like something, but in my opinion it was looking very patchy still. And I think I did not have the old one in front of me when I was doing this because the composition was not the same. But I felt a bit like how I felt when I was doing the plein air, meaning that I was adding some colors, but the things were not going very smoothly, and the colors were just kind of sitting on top of the paper and doing patch of colors instead of creating a whole landscape. So I was a bit frustrated. I thought the colors were nice, but the overall feeling was not so nice. So this is when I decided to use different tools. So the 3 tools I've just showed are stuff that some are new, so I've not really brought them outside yet, but those are really easy tools to bring outside to complement my watercolors. So I have acrylic markers, I have pencils, watercolor pencils, colored pencils, and also pastels, Neocolors, so those are water-soluble pastels. And those are the one I'm using here, so acrylic brushes, acrylic markers, and the Neocolors crayons are kind of opaque, so it's really nice to bring the things together. So instead of having just blobs of colors here and there, you can put one layer of this more opaque thing on top, and it really brings it together. So that's what I've done with it's a kind of light ultramarine, my acrylic marker, the blue one, and I've used that for the water just to have less brush strokes visible. I still have them because I just put a very thin layer, but it just went over the whole thing and acted like almost like when I add a watercolor layer, but because the paper does not react the same, it's easier to gain this effect with the acrylic marker. And then with the Neocolor, I'm just pushing forward the places where I have some water, and because it's water soluble, I can go over it with my brush pen, with my waterbrush, and just smooth out the edges and blur a bit the edges if it's too harsh. But it really helped me because I was struggling to bring back the blue, because like I said, the layering is a bit different with this paper, and those supplies just did the extra mile for me and helped me bring back what I wanted to bring back and create the effects that I wanted. So I was really super happy using them, and it helped me bring some more definition, but also bring some coherence into the piece. And after all, I just went into the finishing touches. So first I used a white acrylic marker for some of the water reflection, and I don't use a lot of straight white, but I kind of smudge it with my finger to have just this kind of reflection in the water, but not like a super pure white in my painting. So it kind of lightens up and bring another texture into my water, and I think it works really well to give this water effect. And I've struggled a lot with the different whites because I've used gel pens, I've used white colored pencil, I've used some different brands of acrylic markers, and those are the Liquitex, and so far those are the best I've had because they really flow super well and the white shows up really nicely. They come with this kind of chisel nib, so it can be a little bit tricky for the finer details, but all the small round points that I've had just did not work. So for now I'm sticking with this one, and it works really nice. They come with a lot of different colors, and some not so bright colors, because I also have some Posca, but first my Poscas are quite old, so they don't flow as well, and I only have very bright primary colors. So it's nice to, because I use them for the final little details like that, I like to have more muted colors just to bring things together instead of just adding some punch of attentions, which can also be nice with acrylic markers to bring just a little very bright marks here and there, but this was not my point for this piece, and this is not how I work usually. So yeah, this was almost the end of the painting. I just added some very last details with my fountain pen to finish with. And because the ink here is not black, but it's a brownish greenish ink, it worked really well for the seaweeds, and it just allowed me to add this extra texture for places in this painting. So here I'm just going over some of the seaweeds and some of the water to add this extra texture. And yeah, so this piece, like I said, the idea is lessons learned, is how I can then bring this back again into the outside. And it really helped me to understand how to use mixed medium, because I really like to use watercolors outside. They are quick, they are really easy to use, but usually I'm not super happy with the final result because I can't render any sorts of details when I'm outside with watercolors. I don't have the process for that yet. So using mixed media, how I've used them here, was a really nice way to slowly bring the piece together and to bring some more structure and to work with the opacity of some medium. So I'm thinking, depending on where I'm going, it's nice to have my basic watercolors with all my primary colors with which I can mix pretty much anything, and then have just a few selected opaque medium with which I can just play and add this last mile to just bring the piece together. So here it was like 2 acrylic markers, 1 Neopastel soluble crayon, and this fountain pen. So the main lesson learned here is mixed media and how to layer them, how to play with them. And the second is, you will see in a minute, but it was about the layout of the page. Something I also don't like usually when I'm going outside is that my page looks very messy. I just start drawing somewhere and I stop wherever I stop. And it just doesn't look like much at the end. There is just this blob little painting in the side. I don't really have place to do another painting, and the page just doesn't seem finished. So what I've done to this piece at the very end is, once I've taped it down, and as you can see, I'm really struggling to tape it off, sorry, is that I went on the outline of the painting with my acrylic marker, and it just gives some more definition. So you have this big piece on the left with nice crisp edges and this acrylic marker outline. You have the picture on the right of the place I was. When I'm outside, it could be just I don't know, a ticket or a memory of the place I was, or just drawing a small detail of the scene. And I have the color palette underneath that, and just the date. It could be also a title, but think about the layout of the page. I think it will help me enjoy more my painting sessions outside, which I want to do more of it this year. So those are my 2 lessons learned for this one, and I really can't wait. I think I need to rewatch some of my old lessons learned because I don't remember all of them. I know I had to take it slow. Don't hesitate to change my brushes. But I feel I really tend to fall into the same traps every time when I'm painting outside. So I really need to do a lot of these sessions and to go back to them and rethink, okay, what do I want to focus on my next plein-air session. And hopefully I can bring you along to some plein-air session this year. And yeah, so this was the other painting I've done. So as you can see, it was very patchy, and this is how the new one looks like. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this first video of the year. I really hope to be more consistent this year on my video, and to it will be more voiceover videos, like I said. So I hope you enjoyed this format. Don't hesitate to let me know in the comments if there are specific topics you want to see me tackle. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.